Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Thursday, March 2nd, 2017, and I think we're kind of in trouble. Gee whiz. Is there any news? Did anybody see anything? I haven't heard much about it. Oh yes, right. The Attorney General, and he is the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. What do you want me to tell you about him? So it appears that he has lied to the Senate Judiciary Committee during his confirmation hearings with regard to his having met with Russian officials, and specifically here the Russian ambassador, who's meeting with everybody, apparently, prior to the election, during the course of the campaign. But he met with them twice, and Mike Rogers, Congressman Mike Rogers, helpfully pointing out to us, well, you know, meeting with the Russian ambassador isn't a crime. Which is like, that's true. Carrying all the cash out of a bank isn't a crime, unless, of course, you robbed that bank and none of that cash is yours. But the point really is that something else was done here that also wasn't a crime, and so therefore, it's probably just the worst excuse I've heard in I don't know how long. Anyway, so he met with the Russian ambassador and was questioned about it during his confirmation hearings and said, nope. Never did it. Didn't do it. Can't help you. Don't know what you're talking about. I think the exchange began. There's a couple of video clips out there. Al Franken, hero of the moment, asking him about a report that emerged just as the hearings were convening. And said that, you know, he was very kind to him. And said there's no way you would have read this, probably, before beginning your testimony here today, so I'm not going to question you so much about the substance of all of this. But he said, okay, there's reports that several people inside the Trump campaign had ongoing contacts with Russian officials during the course of the campaign. If you were Attorney General, what would you do about that? And basically, he said, I don't know anything about that. I haven't read the report. I can't comment on it. But he then goes on to voluntarily offer up that he never met with any Russian officials. So he doesn't know what's going on here. Can't help you. Now, as it turns out, word is that he did meet with the Russian ambassador twice, but must have just forgotten, because who remembers things like that? And he thinks it might have happened in the course of his duties as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, which would be a little extraordinary because apparently no other members of the Senate Armed Services Committee met with the Russian ambassador ever. Claire McCaskill tweeting this morning, I've been on the Armed Services Committee for 10 years. I've never met with the Russian ambassador ever. So I don't know what anybody would need to do that for, let alone to do so twice. But hey, it's a weird and wild world out there. You just, I don't know. You got to roll with it, I guess. I saw earlier this morning also Armando interested in discussing the topic. Of course, the door is open to you to do so. This is big news, reportedly. And let's see. I noticed that he was commenting on Jeff Sessions' offer to recuse himself from the investigation into the ties to Russia. That would be, you know what, that's not even a bare minimum anymore. He's got to go. And as Armando was pointing out, you don't offer to recuse yourself. You just recuse yourself. Just do it already. I mean, he's waiting for Trump. This is amazing that he would set the president up this way. He's waiting for Trump to come out and say, you don't need to recuse yourself, and to spill the scandal on himself. Which I guess is a great Washington play, but usually it's the one, you usually avoid it when it involves the president. You're supposed to fall on the sword, not stab the president with it. But Jeff Sessions, I guess, never got that memo. Another memo they never got, by the way, is White House ethics training and ethics training for the administration. I see also this morning, and the response to all this news has to be the same. I'll borrow it from the president. Boy, that is just not good. They also apparently decided that they were going to, they were looking for headlines about not overspending on the transition and the inauguration. And I guess at some point the Trump team decided to return or to transfer some of the balance of what was left for the big celebration that they didn't need because nobody came to the Treasury. And part of what they decided to do is let's not pay for ethics training for the White House staff and top spots in the administration. And then that way we won't know anything about ethics or how to comply with the laws. And when they try to convict us, we'll say, I thought ignorance was an excuse. And it isn't, but the point is that they thought it was, and so therefore, all kinds of really amazing squirming going on last night. It even ran into one Trump supporter who insisted to me, look up the definition of perjury. If you think Jeff Sessions perjured himself before the Judiciary Committee, you need to look up the definition of perjury. You can't commit perjury unless you are asked a question and then lie. Just lying in your testimony is not perjury. You have to be asked a question and then answer it with a lie. And he wasn't asked a question. Well, he was asked a question, and that's not the definition of perjury, and it has nothing to do with it. All you have to do is knowingly make a false statement under oath or any equivalent kind of testimony. That'll pretty much do it. It has to be material to the subject under investigation. This certainly was, and he was in fact asked the question. The question was, what would you do if you were Attorney General? And then he just offered up, but I didn't meet with him. So all the elements of perjury are there, but I guess maybe they're Russian bots. I don't know, but he was trying to get me to spend time worrying about that. That didn't happen. What should happen going forward? I should spend time with Greg Dworkin, who's waiting patiently to tell me that he also heard the news about Jeff Sessions and maybe some other things too. Good morning, Greg. Are you in fact Greg? I'm okay. That's a lie, as a matter of fact.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm not doing well at all.
Oh, okay. Why aren't you doing well?
The Attorney General is a liar, and it makes me sick.
Yeah, but this is true, and it has been true. You know, one of the things that there's many aspects of this to touch upon, and I'll just do a couple quickly just in case we forget to do it.
Okay.
There's the media reaction to it, as in you've been lied the entire time to the Trump administration to your face, and are you over it? Are you ready to accept that everything they tell you is a lie? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Go.
There's the aspect of actually what it means in terms of Republicans like Jason Chaffetz saying, oh, he's got to recuse himself, or Kevin McCarthy saying he's got to recuse himself. In other words, there are Republicans that are peeling off Sessions right now who are not supporting him, and that is a major thing. You can expect that the Democrats, Elijah Cummings or Nancy Pelosi, et cetera, would say, gee, this guy has to resign.
Yes, and they did.
But for Republicans to say, well, he's got to recuse himself, that's a little, beginning of something.
Yes, it's a crack in the door. I mean,
crack in the door, exactly.
I'm sure they're hoping that people will say that'll do. That's fine. It's not, but
done.
Okay.
But no, it isn't. That's exactly right. And I thought there was a very nice little piece here that I just came across from Josh Marshall this morning. And I'm going to give you a couple of longer pieces about this because I think it's huge. But this is from Josh Marshall.
Okay.
It's called "The Gravity is Strong." And it's an editorial commentary here. And let me just add it to the list of Skype things that I send David. And this one's there and therefore easily readable because it's right at the bottom.
Oh, all right.
And it says, I don't have a clear sense of how big a deal last night's Jeff Sessions news will turn out to be. By the way, the other thing I was going to say, all the goodwill and wonder that we had at our show yesterday about how terrific Donald Trump's pivot was and the goodwill he got from being able to read a teleprompter speech that somebody else wrote without tripping on his shoes. It's gone.
Yeah. All right. That's, well, you know, he's into, he has, honeymoons are quick things for him.
Yeah,
I guess he's
it's
been
over.
through
I
three.
mean, the cycle moves so fast that it's just completely over. So, Josh Marshall says, I don't have a clear sense of how big it is, and substantively, how much does it matter, and generally, how it will be perceived, what effect it will have on the course of the broader story. But as Josh Marshall, wrote last night, there's much more about Sessions' need to conceal the meeting than the meeting itself. So this has all the attributes of a vast and shattering scandal in which people who at least appear to have only indirect and limited roles keep getting pulled in under or compromised by it.
Every time they think they're out.
I know vast and shattering, he says, is a pretty pretentious phrase. And this revelation doesn't shake anything, but why did Sessions have the meeting at all?
That is a good question. Claire McCaskill wants to know.
It seems at best ill-conceived, coming in the heat of allegations of inappropriate contact. And why did he choose to conceal it? And he's got some explanations he forgot, or now that he remembers it had nothing to do with it, and, you know, you can go through the timeline.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But what Marshall says, the whole thing about it's never the crime, it's the cover-up, no, it's the crime. It's always the crime. Sometimes the crime is so well concealed you never find out, like, just for the sake of argument, that Ronald Reagan actually really did have Alzheimer's, but we didn't know that until now.
Is it a crime?
It wasn't a crime, but it was an accusation. It's just things happen that can be successfully concealed, at least for some period of time, but eventually the information comes out. So what Marshall says is, look, astronomers can't see black holes directly. They map them by their event horizon and their effect on nearby stars and stellar matter. We can't see yet what's at the center of the Trump-Russia black hole, but we can tell a lot about its magnitude by the scope of the event horizon and the degree of its gravitational pull, which is immense. So his point is that every time you think you have something, and this is how Watergate started. There's a little thing here, somebody's concealing that. Why are they all concealing stuff? Because somewhere at the center of this, they have to, because otherwise the main thing that they're concealing will be revealed, and that's bad. So you have all these peripheral people getting caught with small stuff because they're hiding the big stuff. Maybe, you know, it's not treason. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just that he owes $1 gazillion to the Russian oligarchs, and that's what his tax returns would show. But he doesn't want you to know. And he's doing everything possible, including everybody who works for him. They're all in it together. And once this starts to unravel, they're all going down.
All right. I'm good with that. Are they cool with that?
Well, you know, it's going to have to take time. So the big story, of course, was the Washington Post one. Sessions met with Russian envoy twice last year, encounters he later did not disclose, and that's what you were talking about in the Franken hearings, etc. But let me go through a couple of things here.
I like that, Franken hearings. That's a good name for the for the whole confirmation process.
Yeah, the Franken hearings. Al Franken may well be the Democratic presidential candidate in 2020.
And you're not.
I'm not.
That's the old Al Franken line, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But,
well, I wouldn't mind that.
He's got a lot of things that make him very attractive. You know, he's a white guy. He's from the Midwest.
True.
He's acceptable to progressives.
Yes.
You know, I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him.
Freehand draw a map of the United States.
You do that too? So I said this morning on Twitter, you know, media, you've been so played. Trump lied about the Russians. He lies about everything. That realization that he lies needs to be your default.
Yeah.
You need to treat him like a liar. You needed to treat him like a liar from the beginning. You didn't. That's your biggest failure, so fix it. And from now on, consider everything Trump says as possibly lying.
I agree.
Fire it. And guess who got the message? Of all people, guess who got the message?
Joe Sonka.
Let me read the headline for you from the Washington Post Fix.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Chris Cillizza writes, it's now political suicide for Republicans if they don't call for deeper investigations on Russia.
Okay.
Chris Cillizza. Chris, admire the lie rather than deal with it, Cillizza.
Well,
the villagers
assisted suicide.
They're understanding this is like a big deal. You can't just blow it away and say, "Oh, look how cleverly they changed the topic."
Yes. Okay. Good. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask. I guess before this, I was gonna ask what Cillizza did. He have any reaction? I don't know if you happened to see. Did he react to? Yeah, you know what? I don't want to switch the subject too far. Go on.
No. If you want to talk about the speech, I got a good one there.
It wasn't the
exactly
speech so much as the other story that didn't disrupt the post-speech honeymoon, but could have yesterday, and I think will sort of fade away. The misdirection story about how the president, I guess the president himself gave an off-the-record briefing on his ideas about immigration reform and was dropping hints that he was essentially that he was going to occupy the same space that he bashed everybody else for occupying during the campaign.
Yeah,
but then didn't.
We did address it a little bit yesterday.
Okay.
But let me go back to the speech. Let's do this in logical order here. And I'm going to send you a little storify that I did the other day. Political scientist Jonathan Bernstein.
Okay. More Jonathans.
Jonathan Bernstein was listening to the joint session speech.
Yes.
And he says, it's a good campaign speech. It's a lot of air for a State of the Union style speech, knowing that it's not really a State of the Union, and therefore, if you say that, everything you say is therefore invalid.
Right, like clip.
Yeah, exactly. First class nomination speech as a State of the Union equivalent, cotton candy, which didn't do what he needed.
All right.
And that files, with the non-exceptional reviews for the first Trump speech, 57% positive, 68% for Obama, 66% for Bush in the snap polls. And what Bernstein says is this, because Chris Cillizza, of all people, was getting a hard time from everybody on Twitter, including me. Ryan Lizza had this great line, because Cillizza said, "What a good speech." And Ryan Lizza said, "Political pundits are the easiest marks."
Yeah.
And Cillizza, in answer to that, specifically in answer to that, said, I ask again, why can't Trump be praised for delivering a good speech, full stop? And I basically said, because it's full of lies, and the substance matters. All right, that was my response.
Yes.
But what Jonathan Bernstein said, look, this is a fair question and deserves a real answer. I'm going to give it a try. And he says, presidential speeches have real functions. So do typed speeches are for sending signals about POTUS positions and priorities to Washingtonians. Neustat's word for the people who the president has to deal with. In other words, addresses to Congress are part of bargaining. That's really the primary function. Furthermore, because it's part of bargaining, presidents and their administrations do a ton of prep work beforehand. The internal bargaining, setting priorities, figuring out what's worth fighting for and how, turning campaign rhetoric into viable proposals. So while it's fair to say that speeches have multiple audiences and multiple purposes, we surely can't say good speech full stop if it does a good job for only one of those purposes to only one audience, which is the pundits. Right? And maybe his base. Not that they listen, because nobody listens to that kind of speech.
Right.
But the pundits loved it. So Bernstein is saying, look, it was good for people like Chris Cillizza, but what's it got to do with the rest of the universe? So, especially because there's also an opportunity cost involved. Presidents only get so many of these speeches. He only gets one first one. And the first one is where most people watch. So if you don't use it for bargaining, or you use it ineffectively, you don't get a mulligan. That opportunity is lost.
Yeah, well, he
unless you
cheats
cheat
at
at
golf.
golf.
There you go. All right. I knew you knew that.
I knew you were going to say that, right?
Okay.
But as far as I can tell, and others have been good on this too, Trump came close to fully wasting the opportunity to effectively push priorities and make choices both in the speech and in the prep. So Trump handed the acting like a grown-up task fine, which no doubt was something that GOP members of Congress is cared about, but precisely because speeches have multiple functions and multiple audiences, that is not a sufficient full-stop analysis of the speech. Last thing, and apologies for going on so long, nothing wrong with theater critic analysis of presidential speeches, as long as it's clearly pitched as such, and not as political analysis, because politics is different than theater.
All right. I would agree with that. Right. You're much better off, or you're much safer with theater analysis when you're already in and stay within the normal range of everything else.
Right.
And when it's just, honestly, he said words and they were English. That's not enough.
That's not good enough. Exactly right. And what kind of low bar are you setting here where you think that that's good enough? It is not. It never has been. Anyway, so now you have this whole big thing with Jeff Sessions. This is from conservative, used to work for Rudy Giuliani till he saw the light and realized Rudy's like a nutcase, Evan Siegfried. And a story I hear from this morning.
Okay.
Why Sessions' recusal is important.
It's an absolute must, but okay, yes.
From a conservative point of view.
Oh, all right.
Allows American people to have faith in the entire investigation, which is sorely needed, especially now. The ambassador meeting story has made it impossible for Sessions to head up investigation and produce honest result in the eyes of the public. Trump-Russia connection stories won't go away without an honest and unimpeachable investigation led by somebody beyond reproach in the public's eye. To me, that's a call for a special prosecutor. Trump Sessions should get in front of special prosecutor momentum and call for one themselves, allows them to seize the initiative, not to mention shows that they're above partisanship as well as avoid perception that Congress pressured them. Mm-hmm. And if, as Trump has repeatedly maintained, special prosecutor finds no evidence, then the matter's over. My point, investigation whose impartiality that can even be remotely questioned does not serve the public good. Special prosecutor removes doubt, not to mention recusals happen frequently in law. Doesn't mean crime was committed, but that integrity of law and the investigation is being upheld. This is a conservative. Marco Rubio made noises about a special prosecutor. I think that that's not off the table. It isn't just him recusing. If he does recuse, then who does it is part of the question. And I think that there's going to be momentum building because everybody in Washington senses that black hole with the gravity pulling people.
I can believe it.
Even, look, if Chris Cillizza could get it, everybody can get it, you know?
I think so. That's a pretty good benchmark.
Yep.
Well, it's pretty crazy. Okay, so and just another reminder. You said so twice, but that's a conservative guy advising conservative people about what is the bare minimum they need to do to not be run out of town on a rail.
Yeah, and that's how big this thing is. Okay. And that means that every Republican who winds up supporting Trump unequivocally now, today, after this, is in big trouble. Ted Cruz is about the only one. Most of them are like Jason Chaffetz, Jason in the House, and saying, well, at least he should recuse himself. And Kevin McCarthy saying the same thing. This is big, and that's how you can tell.
Okay. I'll take it.
All right, here's Simon Rosenberg. Let's review the breadth of this Trumpian-sized Russia scandal and its cover-up. Comey and the FBI had direct knowledge of the Trump campaign Russia contacts during the election and sat on it. Let us not forget that.
Go.
McConnell refused to go along with a White House request in September to reveal Russian interference, burying it until after the election, and now his wife is in the cabinet. The Republican Party, Priebus and Spicer, weaponized Russian leaks during the campaign, magnifying the impact, enabling Russian ops success. McConnell and Ryan killed independent commission idea. Senate and House Intel committee chairs have worked with the White House to discredit press reports. The National Security Advisor to the President lied to the public and the Vice President. The Attorney General lied to Congress under oath about his discussions with Russian officials. And after meeting with POTUS House Oversight Chair, has refused calls for investigations and asked for indictment of Clinton official instead. The U.S. Secretary of State negotiated massive deal with Russian state-owned oil. And the point is, Russian scandal now involves Trump, senior White House staff, Attorney General, GOP Senate, House leadership. This is huge. The fallout could be historic.
I should say so.
Senate, House leadership, committee chairs actively involved in cover-up, complicit now in scandal itself, not just White House, not just Attorney General, not just Flynn. And the party-wide cover-up isn't for corruption. It's for what is likely to be treason.
So,
this is time running out for Senate House leaders to be patriots, not partisan villains. Oh, and one more thing. Gary Kasparov says Wilbur Ross was just confirmed at Commerce 7227, and he has more Russian connections than Aeroflot.
Yes, and some fancy slippers as well.
That's the background for all of this. This is like huge stuff. No wonder Josh Marshall's talking about black holes and gravitation and all this sort of thing. You can't blow this off.
Yeah, well,
you can't just say, "Oh, we're not going to look at it."
Russia's a center of gravity, and when they come over and when Putin rears his head over the horizon, who do you think has to do something about it? Yeah, well, apparently this affects everyone, and they're going to have to go back, and they should reopen. I mean, it won't be confirmation hearings, but they should call Ross back. I mean, everybody thought he would have escaped. If it wasn't for this story, he would have escaped on his connections. And his connections may have nothing whatsoever to do with intelligence or the ambassador or what have you. But now it's just how can you ignore a Russia connection?
Well, by the way, there's some other things here too we haven't even brought up.
Okay, then.
Well,
That's
for
the purpose of
example,
the show.
that the guy that Sessions was meeting with is the Russian spy master in the U.S.
That is what they say.
The fact that it's very difficult to get confirmatory information from any of the other Russians because they're all sort of went dead.
Yes, that's true too.
It really looks pretty bad, doesn't it?
I
mean, if
think
you
it
wrote
great.
this, you'd say, nobody's going to believe this. This is ridiculous.
Oh, no, it wouldn't. You couldn't get this
Far-fetched.
published as a Clancy novel. They'd say
Yeah,
it
it
was
couldn't
ridiculous.
happen. This is ridiculous. That doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah, well, there's
Could be
that.
coincidences.
And I'm also thinking, I mean, really at this point, I would open everything back up, even if it doesn't have anything to do with Russia. For instance, Steve Mnuchin, like, it's now obvious. You lied in your confirmation hearings as well, and though it's not about Russia, and so therefore not yet, anyway, so exciting. I guess at this point you have to say, is there anybody, I guess I'd call everybody back now. I mean, let's call Elaine Chao back. And I'd say, I don't have anything specific to ask you about, but in light of what happened with everybody else, I just wanted to ask you once. Is there anything you lied about before and you didn't get caught about that you'd like to get off your chest now?
Yeah, now would be a good time.
Because if not, I mean, it's fine. That's the perfectly valid answer for the time being until we find out you're lying about that. But do you want to fess up to anything? I want to give everybody that chance. There's
Two
only
more
like
quick ones
14
here.
of you anyway, so we can all do it in one afternoon.
You're right. And here's two quick ones. One is Brendan Nyhan, political scientist. And Matt Iglesias says, sometimes the reason for all the unforced errors in the cover-up is that actually there's a serious crime.
Yes.
And Brendan
maybe.
Nyhan, political scientist, says, this is the problem Trump faces. Quite possible, even probable, that there's no grand conspiracy. That is to say, Trump doesn't think that far ahead. But no explanation for pattern of contacts. Again, Nyhan isn't saying there isn't a crime. He's saying there isn't a conspiracy cover-up. It's like on the fly. I know this because I asked him, and that's what he told me.
Oh, okay.
If Trump isn't up to something with Russia, why are so many people around him talking to the regime? No one has a good explanation. No one has a good alternative explanation. So Nyhan and Jason Reifler published a paper called Displacing Misinformation About Events, an Experimental Test of Causal Corrections. We find causal explanation for damaging allegation more effective than denials. In other words, if it's pretty clear that Trump might be hiding something, that's more effective than Trump denying that he is. So he's stuck. Because it's already out there. And even if nothing else comes out, people already having suspicions about him hurt him.
Yes.
But, the media gave, as Chris H. says on Twitter today, they generously gave him 24 hours to gloat after the speech. And then they opened 3 cans of journalist whoop-ass on him.
Whatever it is in those cans.
Yeah.
He hates cans.
So you know what? There's a lot going on here, and none of it is particularly good for Trump. I would just
It
point
is
that
not
out.
good. And and he has said so. That's Trump's favorite line. I've been using that all morning. That is just not good. Boy, is that bad. From when he visited the African American History Museum and was shown the. Do you remember that line? They showed him the slave auction block.
Listen, this one is a little
that
long,
bad.
so I may not read the whole thing.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
I'll leave it for you, but I'm going to read parts of it because I think it's pretty important. And it's a storify by a fellow named Terrell J. Starr, senior reporter at Foxtrot Alpha, Russia-U.S. Politics.
What?
And here it is. Hey, y'all, I was on News One Now explaining the Sessions lie and didn't have time to explain more of my thoughts, so I thought I'd do it here. He says, I have lived in nations that have been under attack by Russia.
Oh.
Their parliaments took Russian interference far more seriously than Americans do. None of what is happening is going to matter to most of the GOP because they don't see Russia as a threat. Moscow doesn't threaten them. Did you listen to the joint session speech? Russia wasn't mentioned. Muslims, Chicago, Mexicans, and Obamacare were. That's the threat to them. I've studied this region for years. I know lots of people. My training is not necessary to know that Sessions lied and the GOP doesn't care. Or Loretta Lynch. Look at the upper over her combo with Bill Clinton and how that appeared. In Georgia, the country, many of the locals had turned against the president in 2008 but still supported him during the Russian invasion. If anybody knows Georgian politics, you'd know many Georgians hated Saakashvili but would never drop the country to back Russia. This is the first time, he says, I am seeing that an elected body, in the face of overwhelming evidence, has doubted its own intel in favor of an enemy. Indeed, why would the GOP or the White House care about Russia when roughly half the American people are enforcing them to? When the American people do not have the sense to understand that the Republic is under attack, Congress is supposed to fill in, and it isn't. That isn't simply the Russians being up to something. This is about the GOP refusing to stand for anything. This is the ultimate issue. Sessions is the news. It isn't really about him. It's about GOP and Trump supporters not giving a hoot. That's not the word he used. About Russia. And race is a huge factor. Racism is a big reason why the GOP and Trump backers don't see Putin as a threat. But the threat isn't pro-Russia. It's just arguing that Moscow is not the only party we should be looking at. Pretty interesting stuff. And this is all background for how this is all being taken this morning.
Yeah.
So you can't ignore it.
I refuse to ignore it, as a matter of fact. So we're in luck on that in that respect. I'm trying to find. There was one of the great tweets from last night. Was somebody had just said, eventually where there's smoke and smoke and smoke and smoke and smoke and more smoke, yeah, usually there's a fire in there somewhere. And I also had this piece here from Dan Amira, who's a Daily Show writer.
Yes.
Did you see that one? I love coincidences.
I didn't,
yeah, so he's pieced together. He says, I love coincidences. 4 screen grabs of headlines that he's grabbed here. Jeff Sessions lied under oath about meeting with the Russian ambassador. Flynn reportedly lied to FBI about sanctions talk with Russian envoy. Trump gets caught in lie about his relationship with Putin. Trump campaign changed Ukraine platform and lied about it. And that's just 4, because that's how many photos you can fit in a tweet, because there's a million of them. And yeah, it's going to be a hell of a day. And it's Thursday, and it's the day they wanted to take off and leave.
And it's not even 9:30 yet.
Right.
And you look at all of these coincidences, and you think, hey, people are saying the same things we're saying, and it's not even 9:30. So it's going to be a long day. Yeah.
Well, for them, I'm going to enjoy it. We'll take it as it comes here. Actually, I'm going to, now that I mentioned it, I want to check in on what's due on the Senate floor today. Who are they going to be confirming? Who are they going to have to call back and ask if they lied?
Right, exactly.
At some point.
Oh, by the way, there are a couple of other stories that are also kind of interesting and important.
Yes.
Just as an example, and I'll try to find one for you here. There was a big Washington Post story today called "A Raid in Remote Yemen and a SEAL's Death Still Reverberate for Trump." And here it is 24 hours after the State of the Union style speech.
Man, that was presidential, though.
And not so much.
Oh. What?
Struggling to hold off an escalating fusillade from al-Qaeda fighters and armed Yemeni tribesmen, the American forces, fearing the worst, made an urgent request for a helicopter to evacuate Ryan Owens, and he later died of his wounds. But according to current and former officials, the discussions leading up to the January 29th raid, intended as the first step in a major expansion of U.S. counterterrorism, marked a departure from the more hands-on, deliberative process used in the previous administration. And see if you can recognize the word familiar to you and me. The raid, the product of a more abbreviated White House process.
Abbreviated, yes.
Has been followed by confusion within the U.S. government about how operations against al-Qaeda in Yemen will proceed. It's also generated friction with a key counterterrorism ally, smarting from the lack of adequate notice about the raid, and according to local reports, up to 31 Yemeni civilian deaths. In other words, they screwed up. They not only didn't do their homework, they didn't do it right, they didn't prepare. The execution was terrible, and the consequences are awful.
Huge success.
Huge success, exactly. Which means that Trump lied to the American people during his speech, and a day later, here's the evidence.
Yes.
That's pretty presidential,
Right. Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. Well, okay.
I tweeted to Chris Cillizza, so how's the speech going?
Everyone's loving it.
Great speech, eh? Anybody remember it?
It would mean lying directly to the widow as well. Although again, that is a thing that presidents. I'm okay with presidents in the face of the widow.
It's not important.
Saying
Let's talk
your
about
husband's
everything else.
Hero. That's what you do.
Yeah.
But the rest of us.
He used it as a prop. Fine. Skip that. Move on. Where are we at 24 hours later? Nobody remembers the damn speech.
That's true. And everyone was being teased on the night of the speech I noticed Dave Weigel telling everybody, even without Googling, tell me a single line from any Obama State of the Union address. And of course, some people were actually able to remember. And it's interesting. It's like, well, quite honestly, this is maybe a personal malady, but I was like, I don't remember a line from the speech an hour ago, much less other ones that I didn't watch. But, give it some time, because in about 3 days, people aren't going to remember anything except, didn't he lie about that thing? And maybe they'll remember something that was a particular Trumpism because it was so stilted and weird. But apparently not. That's the downside of having actually crafted his speech to be adult-like. No one can remember any of the lines because they can't hear it in Trump voice.
Right, but, as Jonathan Bernstein said, it didn't accomplish what it needed to do, and even the stuff you thought it accomplished actually didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
So
really
how
the
good
rug
was
out.
it?
It's not good.
And therefore, how good was your analysis of it? I think we had it better than they did. We got it right.
Well, I think so.
Morning.
Well,
I'm just saying, you know.
I don't know if he's going to tweet at any time that you were right.
I think that there's a future for Kagro and Dworkin political consultants. I think we should jack up our fees again.
Sure, why not? I think we should triple them from whatever they are now.
Yeah, triple my salary while we're at it.
Yes, we'll do. I'll click on that button.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to do.
All right, so basically that's my summary for this morning. I think that's really the important stuff out there. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, the shell of the onion, so to speak, the event horizon behind the black hole. How many analogies can we keep going with
I don't
here?
know. That's all I got.
It's all important. There's something in the center there, and I think it's worthwhile following. With that, maybe Armando can come on and give his own thoughts about what's going on here. But this is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning, having a great time on the show, talking with an old friend. Thanks for listening. And I will be back on Monday, and we will do it again.
End of the week for you, like Congress.
Yeah.
Okay.
3-day week.
Right. Well, you don't want to overexert yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
take it easy.
I didn't want to weight myself.
We're just warming up.
Right.
All right.
Take care, and I'll talk to you Monday.
Will do. Yes. Okay. So let's see. Where can we carry forward from here? I mentioned, speaking of Congress, what they were up to today. I never know what's going on in the House. That's okay with me. The Senate is what I've been watching. The confirmation hearings do march on. Today we will be seeing, and there were some deals made to limit debate on the nominations coming up, but everybody's still running. You're still basically getting your 30 hours on everybody. Ben Carson, as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, will be up first around, about half an hour from now. Around 10 o'clock is when that vote is expected, and then immediately following, a motion to invoke cloture on the nomination of Rick Perry, who is listed by his full given name, James Richard Perry, to be Secretary of Energy. And we'll see about 30 hours running off on the clock for him. I wonder if they're going to do that. Let's say 10 o'clock. That brings that to 10 tomorrow is 24 hours plus another 4 p.m. That seems a little late for the Senate to want to to agree to get out of there on a Friday. But they might stretch it out. We'll see. Or they might drop it a couple hours early and do it at 1 o'clock. I'll see whether there's any word on deals. But they'll get Carson and Perry through. And I think they'll probably stick, too. I was just sort of thinking about that in terms of the possibility of literally everybody getting caught up in Russia meetings. My guess is that the Russians have seen enough American television to know that there's likely zero value in meeting with Ben Carson and Rick Perry. But I would have said the same about a lot of the people that they actually did meet with, like including Donald Trump, I guess. Although, I don't know, has anybody ever alleged that he had actual meetings? He just had phone calls. Anyway, although I did see one item that I'm unsure of the gravity of it, but it's being reported nonetheless, and that means I'll have to try and remember to dig up a citation for it. Or it's just not a major story. Maybe we'll even let it slide. I'm getting lax. It's Thursday. It's weekend, right? But the word was that the Russian ambassador was given a VIP seating arrangement at a Trump campaign address at some point. I don't know whether that meant anything. Louise Mensch, of course, would certainly say, oh, absolutely, and probably track the planes moving in and out of the area as well. I don't know whether that comes to anything. Let's see. Speaking of other confirmations, though, Ryan Zinke's confirmation as Secretary of the Interior, that was finalized yesterday, and interestingly enough, he rode to work today on a horse. That's a thing that we might, focus on. I'll retweet it so you could all see it. I just saw Haley Bird, a congressional and politics reporter for someplace, the IJR. If anybody knows offhand what the IJR is, congratulations. But Haley Bird snaps. Did she snap this photo? No. Photo is courtesy of BSEE Gov. What the hell's that? BSEE is another Twitter account, and apparently they use it to work to promote safety and the environment and conserve resources offshore through vigorous regulatory oversight and enforcement. Okay, it's a thing. We'll look it up, but first I will make sure that I can tell you the rest of this story. Here it is. Newly confirmed Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke rode a horse to work this morning. Extremely Zinke move, Haley comments, and I think she's right there. I don't know what the benefit of riding to work on a horse is. He got a U.S. Park Police mounted escort, and that's cool. They wore their hard helmets. He wore a cowboy hat because, and I don't know, he may or may not actually keep his own horse here in D.C. You can do that. You got to have, I think there's a stable up in like Rock Creek Park, and it makes it a long ride. But it made him look cowboyish and cool, so I'm sure he's happy with the results. Just by the way, BSEE is the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. So I guess, let's see. Their tweet on it was, BSEE is pleased to welcome the new Department of the Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke. Let's get to work. And here he is riding on a horse, and I got to tell you that I think horse, while fun, probably the worst way to travel to do the work of the BSEE's offshore drilling regulatory enforcement. I think the horses hate that kind of work, and you're better off with perhaps more conventional transportation. But as a way to get to work, I'm sure it's fine. Let's see. Other interesting pieces of news that we might just toss out there before opening the door, and it is open to you, Armando, if you wanted to come in here and just say how much you can't believe that the Attorney General lied. Otherwise, we'll just assume that to be the case. What do I have here? Let's see. I heard this news yesterday. I don't think I put anything aside in pocket on it, but this really sums it up. Republican senator sends his constituents a cease and desist letter after they call and show up to demand a town hall. Yeah, you know that a lot of Republican legislators are hiding from their constituents and refusing to hold town halls, and that in their home states and hometowns, constituents who demand a town hall have just gone ahead and arranged their own. In this case, Senator Ron Johnson has decided to, he's not taking them to court per se, but he's actually had, this is really interesting. They sent a letter, a cease and desist letter, and there's a picture of it included in this tweet from Kaivan. I don't know how, does he pronounce it Kaivan, or is that just Kevin spelled funny? I don't know. Kaivan Shroff. Kaivan. This is his first name. Shroff, Shroff. And you can find him there on Twitter by that name. This is and the picture, though, of the letter is funny. This cease and desist letter is to inform you that any further communication from you, something. I don't know, if I open the whole thing, can I see it? No, it's cut off a little bit. Any further communication from you, something, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson's office, you and Senator Ron Johnson's office, it can only be done in writing. This means that you are not to call or visit any of Senator Johnson's staff or any of his offices at any time. I don't know if you can get away with that one. Our office has done all we can to assist you with your concerns. This letter acts as a written notice of our expectation for you to discontinue your unwarranted telephone calls and office visits. If you fail to comply with this notice, then we will have no other alternative but to Contact the United States Capitol Police and report your noncompliance. Sincerely, staff. And somebody has put their pen to paper here and signed by writing the word staff, and it just says Ron Johnson's staff, U.S. Senate. That's a weird way of signing a letter, and a weird letter to try to send somebody. Oh, you're trying to contact your senator's office? Well, you'd better cease and desist, otherwise we'll call the Capitol Police. And if you're trying to organize a town hall, you should stop that too. That's not exactly what the letter says, I guess. That's how it was being billed, but it's a little weird. It's certainly out of the ordinary. Okay, so let's see. We're up to date on what the Senate is going to do, including what Ron Johnson and staff are doing. Let's take a look at some of the other items put aside in pocket. And, by the way, if you are in the Washington, D.C. area and are available, I note for the record that Jesse Burney has tweeted that there is a noon protest outside of the Department of Justice. If you can make it, I have retweeted that. I don't have any other details other than that, but I assume that if at noon you go to Main Justice, the main Justice building in Washington, D.C., and start yelling, you will find friends to yell with. And maybe other people who are also friends, really, when you get right down to it, to yell at. As long as yelling is done. Or perhaps you want to use a polite voice and say, we really, really think that the Attorney General ought to resign. By the way, in case you were wondering, the answer is yes, absolutely. Jeff Sessions insisted that perjury was a serious, serious crime during the Clinton impeachment and in a couple other instances, and is on the record all over the place saying that it's serious enough that people ought to be either impeached or resign for engaging in it. He just shouldn't because he's awesome, and also he didn't do it, and if he did, it was for a good reason. So anyway, let's see. What other items have we got that need mention? Oh, you know what? I should probably find Armando on Twitter and make sure that he knows that way that the door's open. I don't know whether he's necessarily listening in on the conversation. All right, I'll try and find a way to make that work as well and take care of that. In the meantime, what else have we got in pocket that I wanted to share with everybody? Oh, let's see. How come I got this? I put something in. I guess that must have been it, the Washington Post story, just so I had something to provide to Scott in terms of the Sessions story. And I mean, I don't know if there's any more that we really need to draw out of it in terms of the basics. I'm sure by now you've all read the story or someone else's coverage of it, if not the Daily Kost's coverage for it, which obviously would have, it would have relied, I'm sure, very heavily on those other major outlet reports. You would have gotten the appropriate level of snark along with it. But at this point, I think we'll just assume that everybody's up to speed. Let's see. Think Progress was, I think, the first one out with the video clip of Sessions answering Al Franken. I think here the Washington Post has got a similar clip. Let's see. They have a 2-minute and 15-second clip. I want to see who's got the shortest, most succinct clip. I think I listened to the Think Progress clip yesterday, and it sounded a little tinny, like it had been captured off of online video rather than off of the television or some other cleaner source. Let's see. Where is the... let me take a look and see if the Washington Post exchange has got it here.
And I'm telling you this...
Yeah, there's Al Franken.
About a news story that's just been published. I'm not expecting you to know whether or not it's true or not. But CNN just published a story alleging that the intelligence community provided documents to the president-elect last week that included information that, quote, Russian operatives claimed to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump. These documents also allegedly stated, quote, there was a continuing exchange of information during the campaign between Trump surrogates and intermediaries for the Russian government. Now, again, I'm telling you this as it's coming out, so, you know. But if it's true, it's obviously extremely serious. And if there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I not have communications with the Russians.
Oh, by the way, just one, not to let this roll too long without any other commentary, but two, to interrupt at this point. I mean, now you've seen how Franken framed his question, and it was a little roundabout, and there's good introductory material, and so it was clear that he was basically asking, also, did you meet with the Russian ambassador? But he didn't put it directly that way. He just basically said, okay, so if all of this is true, it's obviously very serious. So you're about to become Attorney General. What are you going to do? And it is interesting that he then says, he goes on to say, well, the story says that surrogates met with the Russian ambassador. Now, he says, I have been called a surrogate at various points in this campaign. But, then he goes on to make his denial. But before we even get to that denial, I also saw a message earlier today somewhere on Twitter, and I think I may have retweeted it. I'm a little bit scattered today. This is a hell of a news day, I must say. But one of the things I saw retweeted was, to that point, I've been called a surrogate in the campaign. Here we are. Jason Sparks tweeting about that. In 2016, he mentions Sessions wasn't just a routine campaign surrogate. I have been called a surrogate. I might be one. I might not be one. And Sparks illustrates his comment with a Donald Trump tweet. Let's see. Let's pull this one up and check the date on it. It is March 3rd, 2016. That's way, way, way early in the campaign. Donald J. Trump tweeting, Senator Sessions will serve as the chairman of my National Security Advisory Committee. That's a big thing. I've been called a surrogate. You are the chairman of the National Security Advisory Committee. Well, yeah, that seems like maybe a larger point and perhaps a larger role than I've been kind of, sort of, maybe almost called a surrogate. Anyway, I guess we should now roll it and let Sessions continue with perjuring himself.
And I'm unable to comment on it.
And that's, by the way, so it was a bad place to stop it, I guess, so I can remind you. I've been a surrogate, or I've been called a surrogate, and I had no communications with the Russians, so I'm unable to comment on it. That right there would have maybe been a good place to end, and you might have gotten away with it, but there's another, let's see, this is at the 1:30 mark, so there's another 45 seconds of getting himself in trouble. Let's hear that.
Very well. Without divulging sensitive information, do you know about this or know what compromising personal and financial information the Russians claim to have?
Senator Franken, allegations get made about candidates all the time, and they've been made about President-elect Trump lots of times. Most of them, virtually all of them, have been proven to be exaggerated or untrue. I would just say to you that I have no information about this matter. I have not been in on the classified briefings, and I'm not a member of the Intelligence Committee. And so I'm just not able to give you any comment on it at this time.
That's interesting because, now there in that clip, I don't detect the same. Is that the entirety of Yeah, okay. So, all right. I guess that's it, right? He says, I've been called a surrogate a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians. I thought he said that perhaps later on. So I, in my haste to point out that he's more than just a surrogate, I missed the end of that comment. I have been called a surrogate a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians. Only you did. So then what? And apparently, I guess his office took the time to claim that he did not have contact with the Russians, and eventually had to come around and say, yeah, he did. And on top of which, then his spokespeople decided to say, well, he never met with him in person. There were some phone calls, so I never met with, as if that somehow made a difference. So he was going to try and wriggle free on that technicality, and then, whoops, they found out, no, he did. He actually met in person with him. All right, well, we'll have to undo that one, too. Dang, too bad. Well, at any rate, that's sad news for people who give a flying whatever about Jeff Sessions. Okay. Let me get that message to Armando. Let him know that he's certainly welcome to come on the show today. And we'll see what that results in, and whether that's just sort of pissing in the wind at this point. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I guess note from Scott here. It says the levels on others coming through on the program are still a little bit low. You know what the problem was? I got a message the other day that said, hey, the levels of the callers is too high. You got to do something about that. So guess what I did? I have some very blunt instruments with which to fiddle with that. I don't have a whole mixing board or anything like that. And I was reluctant to fiddle with them, and I guess that's the answer. Because then I messed around with the levels a little bit, and then the next comment was, oh, now Greg sounds too low. He's too tinny. And so I boosted it again. And yeah, I'm just going to have to go back to the old settings. It's too bad, I guess. I don't have anything that allows for finer tuning of the levels. But I guess it's better that they be a little too high on the guests than a little too low. Some of that, I think for Greg, was, proximity to the microphone. He's got a headset microphone, and he just needed to bend that mic back in a little bit closer. So thus ends, I think, the experiments with the technical production side of today's show, and really I'm thinking forever. Now, remind me next time I get a letter or email that says any of this stuff needs to be adjusted, to say, yeah, to hell with that. It doesn't work. So you're going to have to live with what we got. This is what shoestring budget does for you, where it's amazing we're able to produce this thing at all, quite frankly. Lots of offers of help, that's true. But yeah, so somebody needs to build a studio and have a real production staff before we're going to get professional quality stuff. I think this is pretty amazing sound to have something that's been cobbled together by people in their spare time at remote locations around the country. I wish it was fantastic. Maybe we could one day send a better microphone out for Greg, but I don't know. I want to, the headset's comfortable for him. I don't know if they make a headset that is so beautiful and fantastic that even Donald Trump would tell you it's wonderful, and et cetera, et cetera. All right, let's see. Let's shut off all the unnecessary things here and try and boost things back up. Armando says he may, in fact, be able to get some time free and join us. Let's see. I'm going to raise the mixing levels back up again and cross our fingers and hope that the whole thing doesn't explode. All right. Let's see. What else have we got here? Lost my way in pocket here. All right. Let's take a look at other things that I've put aside. Almost all of it from last night will, of course, have been about Jeff Sessions. But there's other angles on this whole thing. Oh, yes, I nearly forgot this one. Let's put this one on the record, too, since tomorrow, Friday, I guess, Trump will be taking off for his 4th weekend jaunt to Mar-a-Lago. So this amazing little bit of news uncovered by Reuters yesterday. I guess this is in response to one of Trump's early executive orders / presidential memoranda, the one directing directing the commencement of the wall construction. And remember that he had to look like he was taking some kind of action. And so he was instructing the Department of Homeland Security to find existing funds and resources with which to begin immediately the construction of the wall so that they would not have to wait for funds to be appropriated by Congress to get started on that thing. And I don't know whether he gave them 30 days or what it was. We can look up the old executive order, but I don't know if that's going to tell us as much as this article does, which is that President Trump's the results are in. President Trump's order went out to the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security went and took a look at what was out there and available and said, here's what we got. So far, the article tells us, DHS has identified only $20 million. And I love $20 million. I would take half of $20 million any day of the week. I would take 1/20th. Honestly, I would take $1. That would be okay with me. It's $1 I don't have now, right? But they found $20 million. Mind you, this is at minimum a $20 to $25 billion project. And that's a rosy projection, I think, for an extraordinarily complicated whatever it is, project. Okay. 20 million, of course, is only a small part of that. But DHS has only been able to come up with $20 million that could be redirected to the multi-billion-dollar project, according to a document prepared by the agency and distributed to congressional budget staff last week. I bring it up, 1, to illustrate the incompetence of the administration, 2, to enter it as another bullet point in the governance by why don't they just whatever. Vinny from the Bronx, President Vinny in the Bronx, just saying they ought to just find other stuff. 3, to deflate the old stupid, we'll just find the waste, fraud, and abuse talking point. What happened to all that waste, fraud, and abuse? It was worth billions and billions of dollars. Well, none of it was claimed to be waste, fraud, and abuse, but they only found 20 million. And I think it's an interesting number to keep in mind as he heads off on his 4th Mar-a-Lago weekend. The 3 preceding Mar-a-Lago weekends have racked up $10 million in travel costs out of the White House budget. So he's eaten up half of the $20 million that they found for the wall on Mar-a-Lago and golf trips. And he's going to go again. So he's going to rack it up to about 13 plus. And at this rate, the $20 million they found is back down to 0. But hey, who does this sort of accounting, right? Does anybody really matter? And isn't it really more important that the president be able to go wherever the hell he wants? All right. We have another comment here on the levels. I should never have brought this up, obviously, but yeah, Armando too. Armando comes in via the same channels as Greg, and so sometimes, yeah, they're pretty loud, and it's just one of the effects of the way Skype works on the computer. I think they're just basically concerned with delivering sound levels to me, and of course I can hear what I say. And, it's supposed to be telephony, not necessarily for recording. It's amazing that we can record Skype sessions at all. PC-based people have asked me a million times, how do you even record a Skype conversation? I can't seem to do it. It's easy on a Mac, but I guess one of the things you give up is the fine-tuned controls. But I don't know. We'll see whether we can make it work and whether anybody at Netroots Radio has a better bead on how those things can happen. And it may just be, that's what it's like talking to Armando. It's loud. And And I don't know what kind of microphone. I think sometimes he's just calling off of his phone. And I don't know. Maybe we could do with better equipment for everybody too. But I don't know. Let's test this out. Armando is calling in and ready to go. So we might as well let that ball roll. Good morning, Armando.
What ball is rolling? I missed that.
The Jeff Sessions and what you have to say about, or anything else for that matter.
Or we could talk about the intelligence of contacts in Europe between the Trump campaign and Russia.
That is okay too, and I think that's more or less the same subject at this point.
And we could also talk about the Wall Street Journal story that says that there's an investigation underway against Jeff Sessions' contacts with Russia.
Oh, yes. You know what? That's a good point, because I did see somebody discuss that last night and then make the point. Wow, that seems like the sort of thing that probably should have been on the record at the hearing. If the FBI has a current investigation of the person testifying now, when was that going to be disclosed? And I don't know. That's a good question. Not only does he not disclose that he had contacts with Russians, he doesn't disclose that the FBI, which is a bureau that he'll head as Attorney General, is investigating him right now. But you all should go do your own damn homework, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually having an exchange with this National Review guy, Charles Cook.
Oh boy. Fun.
And he's tried to parse and explain Trump's, and I think this is the line they're going to go with, that when Sessions answered the question, Franken's question, he was only thinking of his any contacts in campaign capacity, as opposed to as a senator.
I see.
And the question, of course, is begged. If you're saying, and I said to him on Twitter, and I'll say it now to our audience of millions, that if you meant to cabin your answer about I never met with the Russians, yes, and what you meant to say was I never met with the Russians wearing my campaign hat on, whatever that means. But he didn't have his Make America Great hat on, I guess is the idea.
Yeah, well,
here.
They literally have hats, so.
Then this is what you say. And you know what? A lawyer, Jeff Sessions is a lawyer, knows this. You say, I never met with the Russians as a representative of the Trump campaign.
Yes.
A few more words.
You could.
And then, of course, the follow-up question would have been, well, when did you meet with the Russians and in what capacity? Right?
Right.
He didn't want that question.
No.
He lied. There's just no doubt he lied. Now, why did he lie? People keep asking. This is the part of the equation that I think people are missing an important point. And that is Jeff Sessions' nomination, believe it or not, was fairly touch and go. I mean, it was most likely to be confirmed, but it was, it was 50-48.
Yeah.
Lose 3 Republicans and you're out.
Right.
Imagine a bombshell story. AG nominee met with Russians during height of hacking campaign.
Right. But about something else.
But about something else.
Sure.
I think his nomination would have been in real jeopardy.
There would have been a big problem. And there's clearly, that's right. That's the question is, if there was nothing untoward about your meeting, why would you go out of your way to try to obscure the fact that it happened? Yeah. You would just say, I don't know. You're asking me about campaign staff having contacts with the Russian ambassador. I don't know anything about it.
Nobody said staff of the campaign, related to the campaign.
All right. Yes.
People who draw. It isn't just people who draw salaries from the campaign. It's people who, like Jeff Sessions, had a role in the campaign, a formal role. He was on the national security,
and
whatever thing.
Advisor, something committee. Yeah, he was the
chairman
of his.
Carter Page.
Yeah, and he's an expert.
Well, you know who Carter Page
Yes.
is. If you don't, I'll
course.
remind the audience he's the guy who basically has the most extensive connections with Russia, who is connected to Trump. In fact, named by Trump as a member of his national security team in April of 2016.
Yes.
Remember, Trump was pressured, but who's advising you?
Right.
And the first name he came up with was Carter Page, who nobody knew.
Right. Even in Russia, they were saying they didn't know him.
Exactly. So what is this Carter Page thing? Well, Jeff Sessions brought Carter Page to Donald Trump.
Yes. So now is Sessions he hasn't resigned, I guess, but he would, I think, be the fifth major figure in the Trump campaign to be implicated with improper contacts with Russian officials.
I believe the number is 5
Yeah.
that we know of.
That's good. So we're on to hand number 2 is next.
But of course, the big whale is Trump.
Yes, I would agree. He is
The
a big
whale is Trump.
Right.
Trump was been financed. His economic recovery when he
Yes.
was bankrupt was financed by the Russians,
Sure.
by Russian mobsters. If you want to be more technical about it, he's the main connection to Russia.
Yes. Well, Kazakhstan. Anyway. Yes. Certainly all former Soviet republics. But yeah, and a lot of them still have important Putin connections, even though some of them weren't Russian. So that may be a technicality too. Oh, I didn't meet with Russian officials. I met with Kazakh officials and Georgian and Ukrainian. Really? Okay. Well,
Ukrainians who are aligned with Russia.
yeah.
That's who Paul Manafort worked for.
Yes. Right. Speaking of Manafort, let's see. I know I put something aside the
there's
other day
a
on
funny.
him.
Yeah, I've
His
heard
daughters-
that clip, if that's what you're thinking of.
About his daughter's text messages.
Yeah.
Right. That's, apparently they. Here it is. Raw story is the coverage I have of it. Revealed Paul Manafort's daughters thought Trump was a joke, but they feared Ukrainian blood money. They basically were saying, our dad, I think, took this job with Trump because he thought that there was no way that this guy could get elected, and he kind of did it for sport. But what really worries us is actually these Ukrainians that he works for are major killers, and that disturbs us a little bit. It's kind
That's
of
good
weird,
to know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, but they got rid of him early on, by the
Right.
way. Yeah,
Look,
sure.
what's still the most laughable thing is
Besides his
before
suits.
this, there was some question of Jeff Sessions recusing himself.
Yeah.
If you read the rule that applies to all DOJ personnel, including the Attorney General, you cannot be involved in an investigation with that implicates anybody with whom you have either a political or other type of relationship.
Okay.
This is an investigation of the Trump administration. You're the Attorney General of the Trump administration. Of course you're implicated. You have to recuse. This is as slam dunk. You don't even have to think about it. Of course you recuse yourself. Now, that's what they're going to offer up now, I suppose, as the penance for lying under oath. That's not good enough.
Yeah,
Let's talk about the technicality
well, that's a good
of lying under oath on a material issue to the Senate.
All right.
I mean, besides the criminal implications, we have an attorney general who definitely deceived the Senate and did it with purpose.
Yes. So
How can he continue to serve as attorney general? In the past, we have forced the withdrawal of nominations. I tweeted about this morning of people who hired an undocumented worker.
Yes. Right. Many times.
Well, we had Zoe Baird and Kimball Wood.
Yeah.
Because, well, you can't have an attorney general who's done that, but we can have an attorney general who lied under oath.
Yes. we have one now.
This is crazy. Listen, Joe Manchin said he's got to recuse himself. No, or rather, he said that if Sessions lied about contacts with the Russian ambassador, he did, Senator Manchin, then Sessions must resign. That's Joe Manchin saying that.
Right. The only Democratic vote he got, I believe.
I believe you're right. I love one of the. I saw something funny. Constituent of Portman in Ohio asked him how he could have possibly voted for Sessions, and Portman sent one of those form emails, said he won on a bipartisan vote of 52-47.
That's what they use the one guy for. Lieberman is back on that score, by the way. He's back, and I noted him.
He's an independent now.
Yes, talking about, I wish Democrats would stop this reflexive opposition to everything Trump is about. It's embarrassing. It's going to hurt Democrats.
Your concern is noted,
yes,
Lieberman.
Right. So, this it is rather amazing, and of course, as before, when you were just introducing that observation, the idea that the penalty for his perjury ought to be recusal is a mixed metaphor of sorts. I mean, you're mixing your terms up here. That recusal isn't a penalty. It's just a basic requirement of procedure. It's not something that you get sentenced to. Like, all right, well, we found out about that thing, so you're sentenced to recusal. You're not allowed to play. You're benched. That's not what recusal is. That's just, fairness demands this. Whether you're right, wrong, guilty, innocent, admit it, it's just an automatic yes. You have to. Except in this administration, there's nothing automatic or have to about anything. It's all the norms. Of course you have to recuse yourself, so you will, because those are the rules. That's all out the window in this administration because they just think rules are for suckers. That's so stupid. Rich people, famous people, powerful people, they don't follow the rules. And you sent us to Washington because we're the only ones who understand that, and we can get rid of it. After we use it, we're totally going to get rid of it. Don't worry. But at the moment, I need this. Okay, fine. You caught me. Fine, I'll recuse myself. I mean, right. It's like, I guess the best analogy is you're under arrest for that bank robbery. Fine, I won't serve on the jury. Yeah, I know you won't serve on your own jury, you dummy. Of course you won't. You're the defendant in this case. I know. So why don't we make a deal here? I won't serve on my own jury, and I'll promise never to do it again, and it's all water under the bridge. Are we good?
Yeah.
Not really. You're going to have to serve time on this, I think.
I think there's two things. Perjury convictions, lying under oath convictions are hard because you have to prove willfulness.
Yes.
Interestingly, I think this is a case where willfulness will be easier to prove than generally speaking because of the way he answered that question. I've been thinking about the way he answered that statement and the way he went out of his way to say he didn't meet with the Russians. I think he had in mind that he had met with the Russians and knew that or thought that would become an issue if he didn't try to quell it in the moment. Now, people in desperate moments, and Sessions was desperate, in my view. He really thought this would knock him out, could very well knock him out.
If you look at the video,
that's at the genesis of this.
Yeah, and if you look at the video, you can watch Sessions' face at the beginning of it before Franken puts him at ease by saying, and this is brand new, and I don't expect that you would have read this yet. I just kind of want to put it out there and ask you a general question. And he's very pale as it is, but I mean, all the blood leaves his face when he says the Washington or whoever it is, CNN is now reporting, and his face blanches. And then he says, but I don't expect you to, have read this yet or respond to it. I'm just going to ask you, what you think about it. And he's so relieved because he can tell already where it's going. And I think you have a good point. It's still going to be difficult to prove that, well, okay, this is what he had in mind. But it certainly, I think, speaks to that as as maybe the only plausible explanation for why he answered the way he did. The question is, if this report is true, what are you going to do about it? And his answer is, I didn't do any of that. What?
Yeah.
I'm asking
on a
you
personal note to you,
Yeah.
David, your Congresswoman, Barbara Comstock.
I didn't do it. Yeah.
I know it's not your fault. Yeah, not your Congresswoman, right?
Right.
She called for recusal.
Ah, well, yeah. Of course, you're calling for recusal. This is very interesting, and I guess that'll be the dodge all day long. And you, as Kagro in the Morning listeners, thanks to Armando's bringing it up, will know every time somebody says that what you're really being told here is that the bank robber is offering not to serve on his own jury. Thank you. That's so great. I mean, recusal, it sounds legal. It starts with R and E. And so it's a little bit like resign, but not, this is like resignation light. It's like the way they used to say, let's not impeach Clinton, let's censure him. Remember that whole thing? And then there was the debate about whether or not censure was even a penalty available for leverage against the presidency, but different question. But essentially it was something that people ran around and said, I don't want to get on the impeachment bandwagon, but I have to say something about this because it's so bad. So that's where they're landing now. That's why Barbara Comstock and others are saying, well, if I say he's got to resign, I'm on the wrong team. But I need to say something serious or else people won't take me seriously. So I will say, oh, yes, in the light of this information, he absolutely must recuse himself. No duh. I mean, that's like the sun's got to come up tomorrow. Of course it has to. He's got to, he can't be on it. He can't investigate himself. Thanks for nothing. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. Every time you hear that, again, like a Chrome extension for your mind. Every time a Republican says he has to recuse himself, thanks for nothing. Amazing. Okay. Well,
it is the censure versus impeachment position, and they're in that sense they're lucky that Sessions held back on recusing himself because now they can offer that up and say, okay, I did my penance, as if, recusing yourself is penance. I mean, you have a conflict. You're supposed to recuse yourself. It's not that you did anything wrong at the time. In theory, of course, he's done something wrong now. But before last night, the argument was you have a conflict. Apply the rule, follow it, recuse yourself.
Yep.
And, of course, his resistance to recusing himself is, of course, another indicia that not only Trump and his team knows there's a problem with Russia, but Sessions knew. Because Sessions has the problem himself, is what we've discovered.
Yep.
Yeah, and people are making a very good point on Twitter now, which is last night the initial reaction of Sessions was, in fact, Sessions said, I never met with the Russians again last night, now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So his answer was, I didn't meet with them. I don't remember what we met about. And we certainly didn't talk about the campaign.
Yeah.
At this meeting that I did not attend.
Right.
I mean, it was all over the place. The desperation was weird.
Yeah. I mean, I
come up and said, yeah, of course I met with the Russians in my capacity as a senator. What are you guys talking about?
Right. Of course, that was
instead of all the
nonsense by the McCaskells and others on the Armed Services Committee who say, I never did. And I was from the president's party.
She did talk to them on the phone about the Iran deal at some point that she tweeted out.
Okay.
But, most of them don't. And it's really not an Armed Services Committee function in essence.
Yeah, that's the last people you want, actually, speaking with the Russians.
No, it's really, the Russian ambassador, that's a foreign relations issue, really.
Yeah.
And I don't think Armed Service Committee, it's not routine that they meet with ambassadors, period. So that's all, pretty nonsense. Mm-hmm. But, of course, he met with them in July of this year when we were in the middle of the Russian hack.
Yep. Good point here, by the way, from our friend and correspondent Darwin Darko, who points out the word deplorable. You should feel vindicated for its alleged misuse during the campaign, although perhaps, he says, maybe half was an underestimation. But yeah, I guess that did occur to me last night. That's actually a fairly deplorable thing for an attorney general candidate to do, to come to the Judiciary Committee as a senator, as a sitting senator, and look all your colleagues in the eye and tell them, yeah, I just came here to lie about a giant issue of foreign intrigue. Please now make me the top law enforcement official in the United States. That's pretty damn deplorable, to be honest.
But that's ultimately a key point here. The Attorney General is not only an incredibly important position, but it is a position that demands the highest integrity. Look, Loretta Lynch did something incredibly stupid during the campaign. She met with Bill Clinton on that plane in Phoenix. Did they do anything wrong in the sense of, did they plot, anything at all? I think the answer is pretty clearly no. But the appearance was awful. Both of them should have known better. And it's why I think it was appropriate at that point, because of the appearance problem, that Lynch needed to recuse herself, which she did. But she did nothing like what Sessions has done, and she wasn't implicated directly in anything, and she wasn't aligned with the Clinton campaign. I know we're all Democrats,
yeah,
but that's not the way you interpret it. Was she a functionary of the Clinton campaign? No. She didn't have a conflict under the rule, right? So so that she was fine. But then she created an appearance through stupidity that I think rightly required her to recuse herself, which she did not hesitate in doing. Jeff Sessions was a member of the Trump campaign. The Russia investigation is about Trump contacts with the Trump campaign. And now it turns out Jeff Sessions himself had contacts with the Russians. Maybe they were innocent. Maybe they weren't. But they're subject of an investigation. You are now part of the subject of the investigation. Of course you have to recuse yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, that's separate from the issue of should he resign. Why should he resign? Because he lied under oath to Congress. That's why he should resign. Let's not mix up the two things. Recusal is because he has conflicts.
Right.
Resignation is because he lied under oath.
Yes, I mean
to the Senate.
Had he answered yes to Senator Franken, or I guess that wouldn't have been an answer to his question, but had he gone on to elaborate by saying, I'm not certain about anybody else, but I had some meetings with some Russians, and I consider them to be harmless and benign. They were in my capacity as whatever. Had he said that, there would still be the, I guess, open question, although to me it would be pretty simple. You recuse yourself because you've just told it. But had he out and out said, yeah, I met for nefarious reasons, whatever, recusal would be required nonetheless. So, I mean, I'm interested in this now. Now I have to let Barbara Comstock know that. It doesn't matter. Had he told the truth, recusal would be required. That he lied makes recusal a non-issue. It's a no-brainer. He should be recusing himself because he needs to spend more time with his lawyers when he gets ready to face the perjury charge.
Right. The telling the lie is why he must resign.
Yes. Recusal is not
all this
penalty
stuff
for
we
lying.
knew before.
Yes. Right. A good point.
So, I don't get it. I mean, again, you look at all the statements, but if you look just at the testimony and the written statements, I don't know how you maybe I can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but any thinking sentient being knows that he played a game with that answer.
Yeah.
And listen, who played a game with his answers? Bill Clinton.
True.
And but
No
he
doubt.
played but he wasn't Attorney General, and it was, it's that stupid thing to be asking him about, and it was a perjury trap and everything else. But he did it intelligently in the deposition. His lawyer played a game with the deposition of whatever sex was,
Yes.
and he was able to get away with it because he played that game. So Sessions didn't, and I think he failed. He wasn't as good at it. But beyond that, he's the Attorney General. He's not an elected official. He needs to resign. The Attorney General is the highest position of trust. It just is in our government, in our federal government, because of the awesome power that the Attorney General has to put people in jail.
Yep.
He has to go.
Yeah. Well, he does. Whether he will or not, I'm not sure. Although I used to think that they would all hold out forever, and a couple of them have resigned or withdrawn, and so maybe it's possible. And the fact that it happened midweek is pretty good. We have a couple more days. A Friday revelation. Sometimes they let it simmer off over the weekend, although sometimes that makes it the topic of the Sunday shows. And I guess that's the real test. If the Sunday shows aren't about, we got to get rid of this guy, then I don't know what happens.
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly going to last to Sunday. Will it be wall to wall? Here's the thing that I do think there's a point to be made about the attention span.
Yeah.
Right? Of it. But I'll put it to this way. I assume Sessions will be a bigger story than the speech.
Yes, good. I hope so.
You know, the big pivot speech.
Yeah. I would imagine so. I think everybody's forgotten that by now.
Yeah, and that's what I thought last night. I thought there was an overreaction, as there always is to these stupid set speech things, because people think they're so important, but nobody remembers them. I mean, there's 5 speeches in the history of our country that we really all will remember forever. You know, Gettysburg Address, JFK's inaugural.
Yeah.
You know, you'll remember a line or two from the farewell address about factions they always throw at you when people decide political parties are bad.
There's no sense in which this speech or any other State of the Union, for that matter, ever really reached that level.
If you remember, and I think somebody's right, if you can remember one line from any State of the Union by Barack Obama, a gifted order, then you're a better man than me. I don't remember a single one. I remember one from Clinton, which was during impeachment, when he elevated the issue of saving Social Security, because I thought it was very smart politics, and I always point to it as showing how nimble
I mean, maybe our expectations.
Slick Willie was as a politician. But by and large, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, and that may be a function of I was talking about with Greg earlier. What kind of speech is this? What is the purpose of a State of the Union address? And it's not necessarily. I mean, it certainly helps if you are able to call on soaring inspirational rhetoric at any time. But it's a report to Congress about basic policy issues, and so it's typically not going to be the kind of thing you remember unless there's an anomaly. Like Bill in Portland, Maine, saying that one State of the Union I remember was Bush's significant quantities of uranium from Africa debacle. If you screw up and if you lie about something, life and death, that I guess might be remembered. But it won't be remembered because it's a soaring bit of rhetoric. Like I remember when the guy fell down the steps on the way. Maybe that.
That's actually a very good example of how these things were often reported. The idea of the State of the Union was to roll out some big idea, start to build support for it, and then they'd have the after State of the Union speeches to promote some initiative or other, right?
Yeah.
What did Trump propose? What initiative is he going out on the stump now to build support for out of that speech?
I don't know.
Nothing. Voice, maybe. The one thing I remembered out of it was the Immigration Hate Bureau that proposed.
Well, I recall that they did that, and a lot of people, I mean, if that's an easier question, not do you remember a line, but do you remember something that they said? Sure, human-animal cloning, that had to be out. We couldn't do that. I remember that. I didn't even watch that speech. But, yeah, it's as far as policy proposals from Trump, I mean, he was as vague as could possibly be. And very often they are vague in these addresses, which is another good reason not to watch them.
Yeah, but there's always something substantive that you're trying to get done out of it.
Well, I mean, a beautiful wall, totally going to do something terrible.
He didn't mention the wall.
He didn't? No, I don't know. I thought he did.
So it's not even the wall.
Who knows? I have no idea. This one I watched.
He didn't mention the wall. The thing, because that was, the nuance or the inside voice, whatever people say. He did mention, but speaking of the wall, he didn't mention it in the speech. I saw a report that they've identified available funds for the wall. They've got $20 million of the $20 billion.
Yes, I was just talking about that just before you came on and pointing out that he's blown half of that going to Mar-a-Lago, by the way. So
yeah, it'll all be gone. That $20 million, forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be erased by the end of March with his golfing, which is okay. It's just
the
just
travel
another
ban.
One of those things.
Wasn't mentioned, was it? I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't think so either. He gave, vague ideas. I mean, the only specifics was the voice thing. That's true. And then just some, we're going to do some great things about health care. You'll have access to health care. Right?
Yeah, they use the word access.
Or access to insurance. There wasn't much to it. Ordinarily, though, there's a specific policy initiative which, while they sometimes will credit a president with being specific about it, doesn't really reach doesn't reach my level of definition of specifics. Legislative language: who's going to do what, how is it going to be paid for, who will be delegated the tasks. But there usually is some kind of declaration. But yeah, there was none here. It was just make it.
What's coming out of that speech in terms of actual policy? Nothing.
Just voice. I guess you're right.
It's a joke.
Sure.
I mean, it's frankly, people, I saw somebody, Michael Scherer, I think, of Time, the night of the speech say that Trump has finally learned the power of the presidency because you get to have this big speech. Mm-hmm. Yes, he learned that you can have power through a big speech, but he didn't use it for anything except as he does with all things. This, in my opinion, this one was, fleeting, getting people to say good things about Trump. And of course, the media accommodated that, and that's a good feeling for a day or two. But then what?
Yes, well, it didn't last, and it never was going to. But you're right. That's actually, I guess, the biggest thing to come out of the speech was
that nothing came out of the speech.
Well, yeah, that, and so therefore Trump looks good. I mean, that's kind of funny.
If he doesn't do anything for 4 years, then okay, good.
Yeah, well, then he's defined in hindsight, then his speeches will look much more predictive.
It's just weird.
It was weird. It was a very strange thing. I didn't expect too much of it. By the way, how about this one? Have you seen this? I commented on this one earlier. I guess in another effort to save money, Politico is reporting that Trump's team nixed ethics course for White House staff. Did you hear about this one? This is apparently, I'll tell you.
What did he nix?
An ethics course. President Donald Trump's team rejected a course for senior White House staff, cabinet nominees, and other political appointees.
All right, the ethics course.
That would have provided training on leadership, ethics, and management. Did. Yeah.
Why would they? At least they have some deniability. I didn't know.
Yes. It says the program was expected to cost $1 million. $1 million. And so he thought, I'll save the money because everybody knows either that ethics don't matter or that if they do matter, I have all the best ethics.
Or I need that $1 million for my trips to Mar-a-Lago.
That could be true, too. It says it's unclear if the administration put in place its own program No, it's not unclear. It's very clear that they didn't. But okay, it's unclear if the administration didn't perhaps put in place its own incompetent program of ethics training. So that's news, I guess, in case you thought that there was ethics training or at some point. Yeah, and if they were going to rely on ignorance as an excuse, they're lined up that way. They got that going for them, which is nice.
It's what can you say about this gang? I mean, it's just unbelievable, and it's unbelievable that despite it all, the media will take any opportunity to try to normalize them.
Yes.
They need to stop
that is true. And I'm not sure why that is the case, but they do tend to do that. I'm especially astonished then on that point that there's not more discussion about the revelation that the president, and I still am not sure if I have this story entirely correct. I'll read perhaps this one I have at the ready on the situation to figure out exactly what happened. But Raw Stories reporting on CNN's story. Maybe it'll be linked. I should probably read the CNN story. But that Trump lied to the network news anchors in a meeting about immigration in order to get positive press coverage in the run-up to the speech. And I guess the deal was a background meeting in which the anchors were supposed to cite only a senior administration official. And it turns out it's the president.
It's the president.
Saying, I am going to essentially, implement an amnesty program and that there'll be a path to legal citizenship for immigrants who are already here. There's not going to be the mass deportations that were hinted at. I'm going to take a middle road here and talk to Congress about comprehensive immigration reform. And the anchors said, great. And I guess some of them began reporting it. There wasn't a huge rush to report that. There were some stories circulating mid-afternoon, but he didn't give it enough time to ripen. He should have done it a day earlier. But who cares? Because it was a lie. And it's amazing. If you ever wondered, what would it take to get the press to turn on somebody, you would have thought, well, how about if you put the president in a room with the anchors of all the network news programs and tell them something that within 24 hours is obvious as a blatant lie, and then when you go back to them, they say, yep, we lied to you. Still, well, I don't know. That speech was presidential. I mean, this had already happened, and they were still like, that's pretty presidential. What's not presidential? Gathering all the network news anchors in a room and telling them a lie, and then watching them go out on a limb with it and then say it's not true. What's amazing, I thought that they were going to pull, and they never, I guess because they were so surprised at the fantastic reaction to the speech, they decided to bask in that instead. But I thought for sure the play there was tell them this fake news, tell them this story, and then they would go publish it because the president told us. He would never gather the anchors of the major news networks in a room and tell them something that was a blatant lie that he knew was a lie for the purpose of giving them a lie. He wouldn't. There's no chance we're wrong on this. We're going with this reporting. And then he would come out and say, I never said anything like that. You heard my speech to Congress. You heard what my position is. The idea that I would have considered that's why I keep telling you these people are fake news. Don't listen to them. And that would have been like the ultimate gaslighting play. But I think they dropped the ball, and because they got good, maybe that's even better. Maybe the outcome of it, wouldn't that be something? I'd never believe that the network news honchos had that kind of brain in their head that they would say, if we don't say this is a fantastic speech, he's going to call us fake news based on those other reports. But if we do praise him, he'll be so wrapped up in the tongue bathing that he'll forget to pull the rug out from underneath us. But that's the way it worked out.
All right, here's the state of play with regard to Mr. Sessions.
Okay.
Chuck Schumer said he should resign.
Yes.
And Joe Manchin has said he should resign. And Elizabeth Warren has said he should resign.
Okay.
I'll tell you what's funny. I haven't heard from Bernie Sanders on this. It's kind of weird. But basically the entire gamut of the Democratic Party says he should resign. And
Yes.
a very large portion of the Republican Party says he should recuse.
Which is not a thing, but okay.
This is not a thing. But that's the state of play this morning. And we don't know what else we know. Listen, the next leak will be, you get Sessions to go on the record and say he didn't discuss the campaign. There'll be intelligence officials say the recordings of conversations show that he did discuss the campaign and what a Trump administration would do for Russia relations or something like that. So we'll see.
Okay. The other big news of yesterday, and I guess it's now, maybe it was the day before, but it's sort of fading into the background in light of the Sessions thing, but I guess we have a duty to bring this one back out, is the New York Times reporting on the efforts of the Obama administration in the final days of the Obama administration with respect to preserving the record on intelligence of Russian election hacking. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at this one, but apparently the chief obsession of the Obama administration during the closing days basically boils down to this. It seems clear that there's fire here behind all the smoke, but we are going to turn over all evidence of the fire to the perpetrators of this crime within a couple of days. And there was a government-wide effort to disseminate as widely as possible the lowest the lowest level of classified information available on all this, so that it was in the record in a number of places. And it even came down to, again, in the closing days, officials in the various departments having had this information disseminated to them, purposefully asking rhetorical questions to which they knew the answer in official meetings, so that the information would be recorded in the minutes and become an official government record available to researchers and investigative reporters and Congress through Freedom of Information Act requests. That they were going to this level specifically because they knew that the perpetrators of this crime were going to be handed all the evidence in a week. And what can we do to make sure that, because we believe they will do this, what can we do to make sure that they won't simply come in and erase it all in a massive cover-up of all that they did? That's pretty astonishing, too. Did you see that?
It's all astonishing at this point.
Yes, I guess so. It's almost, now it's gotten so crazy it's actually hard to do a show, because it's nuts to even focus on one angle versus another.
The thing, though, I think it's apparent this Russia thing is the one that always grabs, at least with the media.
Yes.
Because, I think this Russia thing is incredible and always needs to be at the top of the page. But the emoluments thing. It's stunning that we just said, okay. In fact, I don't know if I didn't even read it. This is how jaded I guess I've become too. It turns out Jared Kushner is not going to get out of his businesses.
What? Oh, is that right? Well, why should he at this point?
Why should he?
I mean, the president's not, and I'm basically the president. I'm sure
he was. I remember the big story. He was going to divest. He was selling to his brother.
Everybody was going to.
And now apparently none of that's true.
Yeah, I guess not. It makes me wonder a lot about all of this.
Here it is from Mother Jones.
Okay.
Keeping with family tradition, Jared Kushner won't cut his business ties.
Family tradition, that's true. I guess
newly released documents and statements from White House make clear Kushner is keeping parts of Kushner companies.
Yeah. One, nobody's going to care. Two, there's nothing anybody can do about it. If the president says that he's allowed to keep his, and then I am too. That's not really true, and it's not even true under the false premise by which Trump himself kept his connection. I mean, he said, I can keep my businesses because there's no such thing as a conflict of interest for the president. The president in particular cannot simply, by definition, can't have a conflict of interest. That's not true, but even if it was true, what if you're not the president? Oh, well, but, I have an office very close to him, and I'm married to his daughter, so, I mean,
that makes it different. Here's the quote from his spokesman, or the Kushner Company spokesman. Quote, he has divested from numerous Kushner Company businesses and has no role in the management or operations of Kushner Companies. All right, see, what they didn't say is he has divested from all Kushner Companies.
He said the opposite. Okay. You'll have to send me that article so I can include that in the
to you here. I will tweet it out.
Yeah.
And copy you on it. That's my easiest way of doing it.
Sure. We'll do it the simple way. Let's see. Other things we have to, kind of, I guess, enter on the record. I just want to make sure we get to everything. Oh, yes. This was sort of an interesting one. I don't know. This is so minor now in the scope of things. Maybe I should just... Maybe I'll skip over that one. Well, no, I guess since we're at the close of the show, this is just another log on the fire. I guess the latest in his series of executive orders, or rather, I guess, signatures of Congressional Review Act bills repealing Obama administration regulations. There was, and this I think he may even have mentioned in his speech about rolling back the water rules, the Clean Water Act rules, and water preservation rules. I'm not even clear on what the issue was.
But he promised clean water in his speech.
Yes, right. We're going to have clean water. We're just not going to use any regulations to have it. I'm sure everyone will volunteer to have clean water. And this in particular was another conflict of interest and emoluments type story. I mean, this isn't direct emoluments, but certainly a conflict of interest, and so we'll put it in that folder. Apparently, one of the leading special interests, and you remember that he was going to govern to get rid of all those stupid special interests that have just such narrow, tailored crap. They come and they lobby just for a little benefit that'll go their way and nobody else's. If you wondered, okay, what kind of rule would be so offensive about cleaning up our waterways and preserving our clean, fresh water supplies? Apparently, the rules that he was angry and upset, or somebody told him to be angry and upset about, had to do with water conservation, and the leading lobbying opponents of this rules was an association of golf course superintendents. The Golf Course Superintendents Association of America and golf course owners, the biggest lobbyists against this rule, because, of course, they use tremendous amounts of water to water all their fantastic, fabulous, beautiful, world-class, classy grass. And guess what? I don't know if you guys know this about Donald Trump, but he totally owns a golf course. In fact, several of them.
He's a champion golfer.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I do. Every time I have a good round of golf, I buy a golf course to celebrate. So he's just like us, really. The Trump Organization owns 17 golf courses, 12 in the United States, and apparently the golf industry has been trying to kill this rule since before President Barack Obama finalized it in June of 2015, but it couldn't get killed because nobody in America was against preserving clean water. Except the golf course guys, so here we go. So now the rule's repealed. The golf courses can water as much as they want with no restrictions whatsoever. By the way, also pointed out in the speech, or in some of the fact-checking of the speech, Trump claims that rolling this rule back will eliminate a regulation that was killing thousands of jobs. There is, in fact, no evidence anywhere in anyone's possession that the water conservation rules ever cost anybody any job of any kind, anywhere, any day, any time. But thousands upon thousands of jobs right in front of everybody, right in the halls of Congress. Not State of the Union, but joint address. Another one of those things. Again, so that morning he lies to the network anchors. That evening he goes on every network, free airtime, and lies again. Sure, it's a minor issue, but, it's just added to the fire, I guess. Kind of unbelievable. But you have no choice but to believe it. So I'll add that Bloomberg piece to the fire as well. Now I got to dig up that comment that I found today, the fact check on that one. So you'll be well armed for the weekend. In the meantime, it's almost time to wrap up here. If you had any final thoughts or complaints,
I just can't believe any of this.
Yeah, well,
I'm stunned every day. I've been stunned for 4 months.
I guess
5 months,
that's been their plan.
It worked. If that was their plan, it worked. I am stunned.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're all stunned. It's just not having any effect. All right. I will. Thanks for coming by. Let me wrap up and hand things over.
This nonsense.
Sure. No problem. There'll be more nonsense tomorrow.
Yeah, we surely will.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Yep. You do the same. Let's see. Other things that we need to, I guess, just sort of log for the record. One, maybe I'll read this one tomorrow. We had a nice entry from Digby over at Salon, making a point we've come back to a number of times that Donald Trump wants to run the government as a business, but he's never been any good at that either. That'll, I'm sure, be fun to share tomorrow. And let's see. Oh, yes. Also, might as well just add this one to the record. The FBI, this one you'll likely have seen, FBI apparently at some point gave the Steele dossier on Trump and all of his contacts with the Russians and the various compromat that they were alleged to have on him. They took it seriously enough that they apparently had plans to pay him for his work, because it was all so terrible and obviously unconfirmable, and none of it was valid, right? They were just going to pay him for nothing. All right. Well, I thought that was an interesting little bit of information, and maybe we'll also squeeze in a little bit more tomorrow about the lack of progress that Trump is making in filling his administration. Apparently, just like all of his trolls, he totally meant it. He's going to take apart the government by refusing to fill it. I had a feeling that they were going to rely on that excuse at some point. And you should just remember that. He keeps complaining we're at the historically low levels of getting our cabinet nominees confirmed. You are also at historically high levels for having your nominees have to be called back and asked, why did you lie in your confirmation hearing? And I'm sure with only 14 or so of them confirmed, the ratio is certainly, you're breaking records again, Donald, so at least that's good. Good luck to you with the rest of these things. All right, what about the rest of the news for the day? All the things that I ignored. Coming up next on the After Show, no doubt. Today is Thursday. That means thank God it's Jovadi. And here's what they've got in store for you next. That GOP Iowa lawmaker who wants to limit the number of liberal professors in state universities, he actually got his business degree, as he called it, from a company that runs Sizzler Steakhouse. It was basically Sizzler Steakhouse University, like Hamburger U at McDonald's. The FBI corruption probe is just the tip of the iceberg for Trump's scandal-plagued Border Patrol nominee, another one. And White House advisor Sebastian Gorka isn't sure if Trump thinks Islam is a religion. I think he probably doesn't. Gorka sure doesn't.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, what about the last half? They'll be reporting that consumer spending growth slows as rising inflation hits America's purchasing power. Thanks, Trump. And the EU has stripped Marine Le Pen of her parliamentary immunity. Oh, rather serious, I would think about that. Thanks for bringing that up. Stay tuned for all that and more next on The After Show.